Namaskar, dear viewers and learners, welcome to the session on meat industry byproducts. So this is a part of the 7th course of Diploma in Meat Technology. The course is BPVI 027. In all the previous discussions about all the other courses of Diploma in Meat Technology program, we discussed about the main product of the meat industry, that is the meat. So today we'll be talking about the other byproducts which we can get from the meat industry. Today we'll be discussing about what do we mean by meat industry byproducts, how these byproducts are classified into different categories, what benefits we can get from utilization of byproducts, and then I will be discussing the processing and the utilization of few important animal byproducts. So to start with the definition of the meat industry byproducts, we can define it as everything we get from the slaughterhouse or abattoir or the butcher shop except the meat. That means which is not sold directly as food for human consumption. Those are known as meat industry byproducts. There is a popular saying that nothing is wasted from an animal except its last cry. That means we can use everything from an animal except its last cry. Whether we kill the animal for meat production, whether it naturally dies, we can use every part of the animal for some purpose. The main product is meat and everything else are known as byproducts, meat animal byproducts or meat industry byproducts. So we can classify these byproducts as two different categories. One is edible, another one is inedible. Edible byproducts means the byproducts which we can use as food, which we can eat as food. So these are the edible byproducts. For example, different organs of animals, just like the liver, heart, kidney, lungs, and the tongue, and sometimes the intestine and stomach. This can be used as food. So these are known as edible byproducts. Other byproducts like the skin of the animal, the horn, hoof, hair, bristles, wool, and sometimes the intestine and the stomach part, gallbladder, teeth, these cannot be used as food. So these are known as inedible animal byproducts. But there is no clear-cut demarcation between the edible and the inedible byproducts. For example, because the classification depends on many other factors like the purchasing power of the consumers, the food habit of the consumers, the religion, the customs of the consumers. For example, in India, we don't eat the poultry feet. Normally, we don't buy it as a food product. But poultry feet stew is very popular food in China, in Korea, in Japan. So we can see the difference between the edible and inedible byproduct, which is inedible for Indians, that can be edible for other people. And similarly, with the purchasing power of the consumers, the classification also varies. Means the people who are having more money, they normally don't buy the intestine or the stomach part as food or as meat. But the poor people, they cannot buy the meat at higher price, so they can buy the intestine and stomach, they can use it as food. So for them, it is edible. The stomach and intestine parts are edible byproduct. For the people who are having higher purchasing power, they don't use it as edible byproducts. They consider it as inedible byproduct. So from these examples, it is clear that the classification, that means there is no clear-cut demarcation between the edible and inedible byproducts. So if we see that what will happen to the meat industry if we don't use these byproducts properly. From a slaughtered animal or from a naturally dead animals, if the animal weight is around 100 kilo, normally you get meat around 50 kilos, means 50% is the dressing percentage of a meat animal, especially for the large animals, cattle, buffalo, and the small animals, sheep and goat. It differs to poultry and pig. There we can find that dressing percentage is almost around 70%. That means we can get 70 kilos of meat from a pig of 100 kilo or a poultry of 100 kilo. So if we consider the bone in meat, that means if we include the bone with meat, then the dressing percentage is around 50% in case of sheep and goat and other animals. But if we remove the bone part, if we consider the boneless meat, then the meat is only 35% of the live weight of the animal. It means rest of the 65% is the byproduct. If we don't utilize this byproduct properly, then that will be a huge loss, monetary loss. That will be a waste. And secondly, if we don't use this, we dispose of these byproducts to the agricultural land or to the river or sewage system, then that will create also the environment pollution. That means all these byproducts like skin, different organs, the hair, hoof, horn, and other body parts of the animals, these will attract dogs, cats, flies, insects, birds. So that will create the nuisance, and they can also spread the disease from the animal sources to other healthy animals or to the human beings. So to prevent this disease spread, or to maintain the environment in the slaughterhouse and around the slaughterhouse in a hygienic condition and sanitized condition, we should use the byproducts properly. Now we'll see what the benefits we can get from the use of these byproducts. So firstly, we can say that we can have improved, better environmental sanitation in the slaughterhouse and around the slaughterhouse. Not only in the slaughterhouse, in and around the butcher shop also, meat shop also. So we can prevent the spread of the disease or the water pollution or the air pollution or the soil pollution. And secondly, we can have better price structure of meat. If we only sell the meat, then the price of the meat will be higher, and the animal farmers will get less money for his meat animals, and the consumers will have to pay more for the meat. But if we can use properly the byproducts, we can get some money, we can earn some money from selling the byproducts also. Then we can keep the price of the meat at the lower side, so the producer can give more return to the animal farmers for his animal, and also can sell the price at comparatively lesser price to the consumers. So this is beneficial for everyone involved in the meat chain, starting from the animal farmers, the meat producers, and the consumers. So by proper utilization of meat byproducts, everyone can get benefited. Third point is the healthier and more productive livestock. If we process the byproducts like the bones or the carcass, the whole rejected dead animals or different organs, if we can make some blood meal, bone meal, or the carcass meal or meat meal, those can be fed to the animal as livestock feed. And those are very good sources of protein, fat, vitamins and minerals. So they can be used as livestock feed. So we can have healthier and more productive animals. Next is the improved soil fertility. All this bone meal, meat meal, carcass meal, these can also be used as a fertilizer to improve the soil fertility. Next thing, if we want to process all these byproducts, then we can have some other industries, secondary rural industries we can have. For example, if we want to use the skin of the animal for leather production, then we can have tanneries or leather processing unit. So we can have a good number of secondary rural industries, and by that way we can also create the new employment opportunities in the secondary industry level. So all these are the benefits of the utilization of meat animal byproducts or meat industry byproducts. Now we'll see list of the primary and secondary byproducts. Just I mentioned that we can have secondary rural industries by utilizing these byproducts. In this table you can see that from skin we can have leather, from bones we can have bone meal, gelatin and glue. From fat we can produce soap, or we can use in textile industry. From wool we can have wool garments, lanolin. Feathers can be used for feather mill purpose or for decorative or sports item preparation. Blood can be used for blood meal or serum or plasma preparation. Intestines can be used as casings or for instrumental strings or suture materials. Likewise, the glands can also be used in medicinal purpose, and horn and hoof can be used for comb, button and artifacts. So from the primary skin, bones, fat, wool, we can have a good number of secondary byproducts, and we can have secondary byproducts processing industries. Now for processing of all these byproducts, we need to have a proper place which is known as byproduct processing plant. All the big slaughterhouses, the meat companies, they are having their byproducts processing plant along with adjacent to their slaughterhouse. But for the small meat producers or the individual meat shop owners who cannot have the processing plant, they can at least collect the byproducts, they can preserve the byproducts and send it to the nearest byproducts processing plant where they can be properly processed. So in a byproduct processing plant, we need the facilities like there should be the rendering unit, the gut processing unit, the hide and skin store, horn hoop processing unit, gland collection unit, effluent treatment plant for treating the liquid wastes which will be generated in the byproduct processing plant. Besides that, we also need some general, just like the electrical room, the boiler unit, the refrigeration unit, and the store, office, and dispatch section. And there will be the workers will be working for processing of these byproducts. So for then we need the facilities like the toilet, the bathroom, and the changing room. So all these facilities are required in a byproducts processing plant. But we always have to keep in mind that the byproducts processing plant should be away from the slaughterhouse. There should not be direct connection between the slaughterhouse and the byproduct processing plant. And the passage from the slaughterhouse to the byproduct processing plant should be the concrete one. And there should be clear-cut demarcation between the edible section, that means clean section, and the unclean section in the byproduct processing plant. Now I will be discussing the processing and utilization of some of the important animal byproducts. So to start with, we'll take up the most important, most economically valuable byproduct of meat industry, that is the skin or hide. Hide normally is the heavy skin of the large animals like the cattle or buffalo. The skin is thick and the weight is more, and it is called as hide. In case of small animals, such as like sheep, a goat, and pig, we call it skin. So now we'll see how we can process the skin or hide of meat animals to a valuable products, that is leather. India is utilizing skin of animals in a very good way. We are exporting the leathers to different countries, and I would like to mention that almost 5 to 10% of the live weight of animal is the skin. We should not waste the skin. And not only the meat industry means they are processing the hide or skin, not only we are getting from only the meat industry, but we are also getting the skin of dead animals, naturally dead animals also are collected and processed for leather preparation. Now we'll have a look at the processing steps. The first step is the flaying. Flaying means the removal of the skin from the dead animals. So that is the first step. During flaying, the trained butcher should do the flaying because there should not be any unnecessary cuts in the skin, so that will reduce the price of the skin or leather or reduce the quality of the product. Second is the preservation. If there is no provision for processing of the skin in the slaughterhouse or byproduct processing plant itself, if the slaughterhouse needs to send it to the tanneries, then it needs to be preserved properly. The skin can be preserved by application of salt or by applying the sun drying. So for salting, the salt is added, or otherwise this is the dry salting. Other second method can also be followed, which is brine salting or brine curing. That means the skin is immersed or dipped in a salt solution that is known as brine, and it can be preserved, or it can also be preserved by sun drying. After this preservation, that skin should be sent to the tannery for further processing. There, the next step is the fleshing and trimming. Fleshing means the opposite to the skin side, the flesh side, that is the inner side of the skin that is having some muscular layer, some attached fatty layers and connective tissue layers. Those layers are to be removed. So that is the fleshing process. And trimming is, that means the giving the skin a regular shape. That means the removing all the irregular edges of the skin, just like the irregular parts like the tail part, the ear part, or the snout, or the lips area. So those should be removed from the skin just to give it a regular shape. That is the trimming. Next step is the soaking and liming. That means the dried skin, the preserved, the brine cured or salt cured skins now should be soaked in water and they should be limed. Limed means that there will be application of lime solution, that is the calcium hydroxide. This will help to loosen the hair follicle. Ultimately, in leather, we don't want to have the hair of the animal. So we have to remove the hair. For that, we need to follow this liming process, and during liming another chemical, sodium sulfide, is also used, which actually dissolve the hair. So next step is the washing and deliming. Once the hair are loosened and those are dissolved with the chemicals, that has to be washed out. So next step is the washing, and deliming means we have also to remove the calcium hydroxide which applied for liming. So washing is a compulsory step here, and for deliming we can also use some chemical like sodium chloride. Next step is the baiting. Baiting means the treatment of the skin with some proteolytic enzymes just to remove the non-leather forming proteinaceous part of the skin. So bedding is done with the help of some acid like hydrochloric acid. Next is the pickling, that means treatment with some acids just to make the skin ready for the next step, the important step, that is the tanning. Tanning means the conversion of the skin or hide into leather. This is the chemical process, the final process. So for tanning we can use different chemicals or organics or vegetable dye, and after tanning there are number of post-operational, post-tanning operations like there may be setting, trimming and glazing of the leathers for better look. So these are the steps for processing of skin for formation of leather from skin of the meat animals. Now we'll see the processing steps for another important animal byproducts, that is the animal intestine. Animal intestine, some people can buy and clean it and cook it, eat it as food item. So that is the use of the animal intestine as food. Otherwise, these animal intestine can also be processed and used as food containers. For a very popular product, that is the sausage. Sausage is filled in the natural casing, that is the animal casing. The sausage is also packed in artificial casing, but the natural casing which is made from intestine can also be used for containing the sausage. The casing is also used for the internal surgery as suture materials. It can also be used for some musical instruments as strings, and also for sport items like different badminton rackets as strings. So now we'll see how can you prepare casing from animal intestine. First step is the collection of intestine, and that means intestine has to be collected from the healthy animals, healthy disease-free animals, for edible purpose mainly, and they have to be cleaned. They have to be cleaned from all the adjacent layers, the mesenteric membranes and the fatty tissues. Then the next step is the stripping of the intestine. Stripping means removing the intestinal content. Intestine is still having some of the undigested food materials. So those undigested food materials have to be removed from the intestine, and this is the process of stripping. Stripping can be done manually, can be done mechanically. Manually there is a very easy process, means if we pass the intestine of the animal through 2 fingers of one hand and pull through the other hand, then it will strip out remove the intestinal contents of the intestine. Next step is the fermentation. That means the intestine, the cleaned intestine is now dipped into the hot water, warm water, 70 degrees centigrade for few hours, just to loosen different layers of the intestine. Intestine is having 4 different layers. From inside out there are mucus, submucus, then muscular layer, and the outermost layer is the serous layer. The casing is normally prepared from the second layer, that is the submucous layer. So all the other 3 layers are to be removed, and for removal of that we need to loosen up the 4 layers of the intestine, and fermentation helps in that loosening process. And next step is the turning. Turning is normally done in case of large animals intestine, for cattle and buffalo, where the casing is turned inside out for better removal of all the layers. Next step is the sliming. Sliming means removal of all the mucus layer and other layers except the submucosal layer. Finally, the casing should be washed, inspected for its color, for if there is any nodule, any hole or any remaining layer is there. So inspection is the next step. Then the grading should be done. Grading means the animal intestine, the casing is now graded to different grades by seeing its length or diameter or quality of the casing. And finally, the casing should be preserved in salt, dry salt, or in salt solution, brine solution, and it should be cured and packed in salt solution for further use. And the casing can be used for sausage container, or for suturing materials, or for sports items or the musical instruments. Now we'll see another animal byproduct, that is animal fat. Animal fat can be recovered from the dead animals or the slaughtered animals, and that can be used for edible purpose as cooking oil, cooking fat, or the oleomargarine, or in some bakery products. Or the fats can also be inedible fat, can also be used in some industries as technical fat. Normally the fat which is rendered from the cattle and sheep is known as tallow, and the fat which we get from the pig is known as lard. So the fat is having edible uses, and the the inedible use. Inedible use, that we call it technical fat. Technical fat can be used for soap preparation, soap industry, candle making, for cream, for cosmetics, for plastics, for textiles, paints, and many other purposes the fat can be used. So the recovery of the fat from the animal carcass, the process is known as the rendering. Rendering may be of two types, the dry rendering and wet rendering. And through this process, actually we can also, we can recover the fat, animal fat, and we can also prepare some other products like the carcass meal or meat cum bone meal. If you see the flowchart for dry rendering process, you can see that the first step is the removal, means we take the whole carcass, whole dead animals or the rejected part or only the fleshings or trimmings of the carcass, and we should remove the hides, horn, hoof and gut contents. Then we can divide the carcass into small pieces. Then we can load it into the dry renderer. Dry renderer means where there is no addition of water. In wet rendering, water is added. In dry rendering, normally the carcass material is cooked with heat by application of steam. No direct water is added. That is the dry rendering. Then the carcass material is cooked at around 130 degree centigrade temperature at 60 to 80 pound per square inch pressure for 3 to 4 hours. Then the cooked material is emptied into percolating tank for separation of fat and the solid content along with the water. So the fat is first removed, so we can recover the fat from this cooked material, and the second residual part is having some solid and liquid, means water part. So the next step we can press out, means we can squeeze this solid material to remove the water, and we can dry the solid material. We can have the meat cum bone meal or the carcass meal. So through rendering we can recover the fat. We can also prepare carcass meal or meat cum bone meal. Now we'll see another animal byproduct, that is bone. So we can have bone from the boneless meat, means we can separate the bone from the meat or the carcass, and we can use the bone for different purpose. We can recover the fat from bone, we can recover the protein from bone. The protein of the bone can be utilized for gelatin preparation and the glue preparation, and the whole bone can also be utilized for preparation of bone meal, which can be used either as the animal feed or can be used as the fertilizer for increasing the soil fertility. So now we will have a look at the slide for processing steps for gelatin preparation. Gelatin actually is a very important animal byproduct, and it can be used in medicine as capsule making, and it can also be used in some other food industries for ice cream preparation, chocolate preparation, gel preparations. So animal gelatin can also be used in food industry, and the good grade gelatin is known as gelatin, and the lower grade is known as the glue, which can be used as adhesive in different other industry. Okay, so we'll now see the processing steps for gelatin and glue preparation. So first you have to take the long bones, cut into small pieces, then we can cook it. That means we can use the rendering process. We can cook it at high temperature along with butter. We can remove the fat components. So the bone is having fat, protein and water and minerals. So now first step we are removing the fat only. Second step, we should wash the bones and we should dry it and crush it into small pieces. Then the next step we have to remove the minerals from the protein and water part. So ultimately we need the protein part, that is the collagen or ocean of the bone, which will be converted into the gelatin or glue. So we need ultimately the protein part only. Now the next step is the demineralization. That means we'll remove the minerals from the bone part. So for demineralization we can use some acids like hydrochloric acids. Next step is the extraction or cooking. That means we have removed the fat, we have removed the minerals. Now we are having the water and the protein components. The protein component is the collagen or ocean. That has to be hydrolyzed, has to be cooked and hydrolyzed to the gelatin. So next step is the extraction or cooking, and cooking is done at different temperatures starting from 60 degrees centigrade to 100 degrees centigrade. The lower temperature will get the gelatin, good quality gelatin. At the higher temperature, that means 100 degrees centigrade, will have the glue. So next step is the filtration of the liquid. So for just to give it more clarity, then is the extra concentration and drying, we will have the gelatin. So now we can see how we can prepare bone meal. Bone meal, we can collect the bones, sterilize the bone, then we can drain and cool, dry, and ultimately we can mill it to powder form. We can have the bone meal, which can be used as animal feed or the fertilizer. If we see the use of animal blood, we can use the animal blood as food, as feed, animal feed, or the fertilizer, and we can also use the animal blood for in some medicinal purposes and also for some laboratory purpose for media preparation. If we see the processing steps of blood meal, you can see the blood is collected, then the lime is added, calcium hydroxide is added for preservation of blood, then cooking is done, then we'll have the coagulum of the blood that should be strained, dried, and powdered form. So we'll have the blood meal that can be used as feed or the fertilizer. We can also properly utilize different glands and organs for different medicinally important active principles. For some enzymes or for some hormones, we can utilize the different glands like the liver, pancreas, pituitary gland, thyroid, adrenal gland, cup, stomach, gallbladder, and ovary. We can have different kinds of enzymes, just like from liver to liver extract. From pancreas, we can have insulin, trypsin, lipase. We can have some hormones from pituitary glands, just like growth hormones. From thyroid, we can have thyroxine, adrenaline. We can have adrenalines. All this can be utilized for the medicinal purpose, but for that we have to collect all the glands from healthy disease-free animal, and we have to preserve the glands immediately after slaughter of the animals within 1 hour by freezing. Now we'll see what the poultry industry byproducts we can have. We can use the poultry feathers. Feathers can be utilized for livestock feed or for bedding materials or fertilizers or ornamental use, or even the shuttlecock for sport items. The blood from the poultry can also be utilized for livestock feed or fertilizers, just like the blood milk from other animals also. And offals, that means the different organs of the poultry, like some edible organs, liver, heart, stomach part, gizzard part, and those can be used as food or can be used as livestock feed or pet food or the fish food. So we can utilize all these poultry industry byproducts, and we can have a look at the preparation of feather meal, which can be prepared from using the feathers of the blood. Feathers should be collected first, then they should be washed with mild detergent and water, then they can be drained and pressed, and then they should be rendered, just like the rendering of for recovery of fat. The feathers can also be rendered at high temperature and pressure for 1 hour. Then they should be cooled down and fat should be removed. Then after drying, they should be grounded into powder form. The feather meal can be fed to the livestock from poultry or the pig. They can be fed as livestock feed or can also be utilized for the soil fertility as fertilizer. So today, friends, we discussed about the meat industry byproducts, the edible and inedible byproducts. We also discussed about the benefits we can get from the utilization of these byproducts, and we also discussed some of the processing steps for few of the important animal byproducts, just like the bone meal preparation, blood meal preparation, animal casing preparation, skin processing, and collection, utilization of glands and organs, and lastly the poultry byproducts like feather meal. So this is all for today. Thank you for watching this program. Namaskar.